The first explosion comes at 5:42. It tears through the damp English dawn before the siren finishes its second wail. A Hawker Hurricane, parked wingtip to wingtip beside three others, erupts in orange flame as 20mm cannon shells rip through its fuel tanks. A second fighter detonates before its pilot reaches the cockpit. Then a third. Then two more in rapid succession. 6 Royal Air Force aircraft are destroyed before a single wheel leaves the ground. Above the field, banking smoothly in the pale morning light, a Luftwaffe pilot watches the chain reaction unfold. He does not need to fire another shot. The work is already done. He throttles back, turns southeast, and disappears toward France. On the ground, amid smoke, twisted aluminum, and burning aviation fuel, one man stands very still. They called his idea medieval. They said it belonged in a siege manual, not a modern air force. They told him Britain did not win wars with wire. Spring 1940. The air war over Europe has become a mathematics problem no one can solve. German bombers cross the channel in formations so tight they darken patches of sky. Hurricanes and Spitfires scramble upward, burning precious fuel simply reaching altitude. Radar stations along the coast provide warning, yes, but warning is not the same as readiness. The most vulnerable aircraft are not the ones in the sky. They are the ones on the ground. Caught while taxiing. Destroyed while pilots sprint across wet grass toward spinning propellers. Annihilated in neat rows before engines ever reach full power. RAF Fighter Command calls it the scramble window, the narrow gap between alarm and altitude. It is measured in minutes. The Luftwaffe learns to hunt inside that gap. German fighter sweeps precede bomber streams, skimming tree lanes at 50 feet, crossing perimeter fences in seconds. They strafe runways, chew through parked aircraft, turn sector stations into burning fields of debris. A Messerschmitt diving at 300 knots can cover the final mile from hedgerow to hangar in under 20 seconds. A hurricane requires 90 just to taxi into position. The equation favors speed. It always does. Station commanders attempt dispersal. Aircraft are scattered across fields. Camouflage nets are thrown over wings. Revetments are dug where soil permits. It helps, but revetments require earth-moving equipment and weeks of labor, and Britain in the spring of 1940 has neither weeks nor spare machinery. Smoke generators are installed to obscure approach paths. The wind betrays them. Anti-aircraft guns are positioned along perimeter roads. Low-level fighters weave beneath effective tracking arcs. Decoy aircraft are built from wood and canvas. They burn convincingly once or twice before reconnaissance photographs expose them. Every solution costs time. Germany operates on tempo. Britain operates on reaction. And reaction bleeds. RAF Kenley, south of London. A sector station responsible for protecting the approaches to the capital. In the maintenance logs for late April, a name begins appearing in marginal notes. Flight Lieutenant Wilfred Truelove. Not a pilot. Not a strategist. A technical officer. A man responsible for keeping machines serviceable. He grew up under the shadow of Canterbury Cathedral, where his father repaired clocks, gears, springs, escapements, counterweights. The logic of stored energy and controlled release. By 14, Wilfred could disassemble a watch movement blindfolded. By 16, he apprenticed with an automotive engineer in Maidstone, learning how combustion translated fuel into motion and motion into torque. He joined the RAF in 1936 as a technical specialist. The service needed men who understood metal fatigue and hydraulic pressure, men who could read a schematic and translate it into a field repair with 3 tools and a length of wire. Truelove was quiet, methodical, the sort of officer pilots sought when something was wrong but the manual offered no answer. He could listen to an engine and diagnose a failing magneto. He could feel tension in a control cable and predict its failure 2 sorties in advance. His notebooks were filled with marginal sketches and small modifications that never made it into official reports. He did not theorize. He observed. And what he observed in the spring of 1940 was waste. Aircraft destroyed not in combat, but in the 30 seconds between ignition and takeoff. Pilots killed before leaving English soil. The calculus was brutal. Germany could replace bombers faster than Britain could replace fighters. And fighters died fastest when they could not fight back. Truelove began walking the perimeter of Kenley each evening. He studied approach angles, noted the contour of nearby tree lanes. observed how morning light struck the eastern edge of the field. He watched how enemy aircraft came in low and fast, using the sun as cover. He asked himself a clockmaker's question. What stops motion most efficiently? The answer was older than aviation, older than engines. It was tension. It was inertia. It was a barrier that converts speed into catastrophe. The Luftwaffe possessed initiative. That was the unspoken truth. German pilots chose when and where to strike. British pilots reacted. Reaction required time. Time required survival. And survival in May 1940 was measured in seconds. At a late April sector conference, a group captain summarized the situation in 8 words. We lose more aircraft on the ground than aloft. The room fell silent. No one disagreed. No one had a solution. True Love was not in the conference room. He was in a maintenance shed at Kenley, sketching on the back of a checklist. The drawing was not elegant. It was not modern. It looked like something from a medieval field defense. A grid. Steel cables. Anchored underground. Tensioned. Raised and lowered by pulleys. He brought it to Wing Commander Thomas Prickman on a Tuesday morning. Prickman studied the page for 30 seconds. Then looked up. Are you serious? True Love met his gaze. Yes, sir. The commander glanced again at the diagram. Lines stretched across an airfield, mechanical notes in the margins. It looks, Prickman said carefully, like something designed to stop cavalry. Yes, sir. And you believe this stops Messerschmitts? I believe it stops motion, True Love replied. Outside, another siren wailed faintly in the distance. Prickman closed the folder. You have 72 hours, he said. 72 hours, Wing Commander Prickman had said. No committee, no formal review. Just 3 days and whatever could be scavenged. True Love saluted once, left the office, and went directly to the motor pool. He recruited 4 mechanics and a welder. Not volunteers. Men who understood tension, load, and failure. Men who knew the difference between something that merely looked strong and something that would hold under shock. They began with materials. Kenley had no allocation for experimental defenses, so they scavenged. Steel cable from a partially bombed construction depot in Croydon. Automotive suspension springs stripped from wrecked lorries in a scrapyard outside Caterham. Concrete mix borrowed, unofficially, from a public works storage yard. Pulleys removed from damaged hangar doors. Nothing was new. Nothing was elegant. Everything was repurposed. The concept was simple in outline and complicated in execution. 16 steel cables would span the primary approach path at calculated intervals. Each cable would be anchored to buried concrete blocks on both ends. Each would be connected to a spring tension system designed to absorb impact without snapping. During normal operations, the wires would lie flat, 18 inches above turf, painted dull green to blend with grass. When observers detected incoming low-level aircraft, ground crew in slit trenches along the runway edge would pull a lever system. The pulleys would lift the cables upward in less than 10 seconds. From nearly invisible to 6 feet high. A Messerschmitt traveling at 280 knots would not see it. It would hit it. And at that speed, steel wire does not yield. It converts velocity into fragmentation. Other officers heard about the project by Thursday afternoon. Some laughed openly. An engineering lieutenant described it as a medieval contraption unbefitting a modern air force. A squadron leader suggested that time would be better spent improving anti-aircraft coordination. True Love did not argue. He kept measuring. The key variable was not height. It was tension. Too tight, and the cable would snap on impact. Too loose, and the aircraft might deflect without catastrophic damage. He calculated approximate impact forces for a 2,500 kilogram fighter traveling at low altitude strafing speed. He estimated propeller tip velocities. He considered wing loading and landing gear geometry. The wire did not need to stop the aircraft entirely. It needed to disrupt it violently enough that controlled flight became impossible. On Thursday evening, the first cable was strung across a disused southern taxiway. They tested the pulley system manually. The wire rose. 6 feet. Dropped. Rose again. 8 seconds. True Love adjusted spring tension by 3 turns. Tested again. 7 seconds. He recorded everything. A small crowd gathered. Pilots, clerks, ground crew, watching the absurdity of wires stretched across a Royal Air Force runway. No one believed it would matter. No one stopped him either. By 4 o'clock Friday morning, The installation was complete. 16 cables. Anchored. Concealed. Connected to a central pulley trench disguised with sandbags 30 yards from the runway edge. Total weight, under 800 pounds. Cost, effectively zero. At 5:30, the radar station relayed a plot. Unidentified aircraft inbound from the southeast. Low altitude. High speed. Estimated time to Kinley, 8 minutes. The scramble bell rang. Pilots ran. Engines coughed and caught, propellers clawing at damp morning air. True Love stood inside the trench with two mechanics gripping the lever assembly. He could feel vibration through the earth even before the aircraft appeared. At 5:42, 6 Messerschmitt Bf-109s crossed the perimeter fence at 50 feet. Loose finger 4 formation. Cannon already firing. Tracers streaked low across grass and asphalt. The lead pilot did not see the wires. At that speed, with the sun low behind him, he would not. True Love waited until the formation committed fully across the field. Now, the ground crew pulled. The pulleys shrieked under load. 16 cables snapped upward in unison. The first Bf-109 struck at approximately 280 knots. The wire did not break. It bent under impact, storing energy, then recoiled. The propeller disintegrated instantly. Blade fragments punctured the engine cowling. The aircraft pitched forward, nose first, and cartwheeled across turf in a shower of debris and flame. 0.3 of a second later, the second fighter met the adjacent cable. Same result. The third attempted to climb. Too late. The wire caught the landing gear assembly. The aircraft flipped inverted and slammed into the ground at over 200 knots. The fourth and fifth pilots saw the wreckage ahead and banked left. The grid was wider than they anticipated. Both caught outer cables with their wing tips. Control surfaces tore free. One spiraled into the tree-line beyond the perimeter. The other impacted in a shallow arc just beyond the southern boundary. The sixth pilot broke hard right and climbed. He circled once. He did not fire again. Then he departed southeast. The entire engagement lasted 11 seconds. Smoke drifted across the field. 5 impact sites. 6 burning aircraft. 0 RAF casualties. True Love signaled. The cables dropped flat against the grass. 3 hurricanes. Engines already at full throttle, taxied past still-burning wreckage and lifted into a sky now empty of threat. The pilots did not yet know what had happened. They would learn later. Wing Commander Prickman walked the crash sites with a notebook. He measured debris spread, examined cable scoring, interviewed trench observers. Then he returned to the operations room and telephoned group headquarters. "Send a technical team," he said. Immediately. There was a pause. Then he added, "True Love was right." By noon, photographs of shattered Messerschmitts lay on desks at Fighter Command. By evening, engineers from Farnborough arrived to inspect the system. By Sunday, True Love stood inside Bentley Priory briefing Air Chief Marshal Hugh, Dowding himself. Dowding listened without interruption, then asked 3 questions. How much does it cost? Negligible, sir. How quickly can it be installed? 48 hours with materials. How many aircraft has it saved? 6 this morning. Possibly more if the enemy adjusts. Dowding nodded once. Implement at 12 forward stations. True Love saluted. He did not smile. There was too much wire to string. Dowding did not waste time. Authorization moved faster than paperwork normally allowed. Within hours, requisition orders were issued. Within days, lorries began carrying steel cable and salvaged pulleys across southern England. True Love was assigned oversight. 6 men. Broad authority. Permission to draw materials from any depot in Southern Command. He returned to Kinley the same afternoon. There was no celebration, only replication. Biggin Hill first. The terrain differed. Slight elevation changes near the southern approach. The cable grid had to account for uneven ground. True Love adjusted anchor depths and spring tension to compensate for gradient. Tangmere required concealment along hedgerows. The pulley trench was disguised as a drainage channel. Nordholt lacked natural cover. False haystacks were constructed to house lift mechanisms. Manston's coastal exposure meant salt air corrosion. Extra grease was applied to moving parts. Springs were doubled in tension. Each airfield required adaptation. The principle remained constant. Flat during normal operations. Raised in under 10 seconds. Invisible until needed. By early June, reconnaissance photographs taken by the Luftwaffe began to show irregular ground patterns near several RAF airfields. German intelligence officers noted anomalies, thin lines across grass, subtle shadow distortions in early morning light. After-action reports from returning fighter pilots became more specific. Unexpected obstacles encountered during low-level attack. Wire traps resembling ancient fortifications. Recommend increased altitude during strafing operations. German planners adjusted. They ordered fighters to approach from higher altitude or to avoid extended low-level runs. The change altered the arithmetic. Strafing accuracy declined. Bombs released from higher altitude missed revetments and hangars. Cannon fire scattered. RAF fighters reached takeoff speed before the first shells landed. Maintenance logs told the story plainly. Aircraft written off at equipped fields dropped by nearly 40% during low-level attacks. Ground crew casualties declined. Fewer mornings began with burned fuselages and stretcher teams. The scramble problem did not disappear, but its lethality narrowed. The window shrank. By midsummer, Luftwaffe strategy shifted. The Battle of Britain intensified. Daylight bombing operations took priority over tactical airfield strafing. The cable systems remained in place, but were triggered less frequently. Some were removed to accommodate runway expansion as aircraft performance improved. Others were stored in hangars, coiled and tagged. They had done what they were designed to do. Nothing more. The system was never mass-produced in factories. It did not require industrial scaling. It was a field expedient, precise, temporary, effective. Engineers in North Africa later adapted variations for desert strips, adjusting anchor systems for sand. Coastal Command experimented with maritime barrier concepts. American observers studying British defenses in 1942 recorded the principle during training exercises. It never became formal doctrine. It remained a solution to a specific vulnerability during a narrow window of time. Exactly as intended. The official history of RAF Fighter Command mentions the cable barriers in a single footnote. 14 words. No attribution. Wilfred Truelove's name does not appear. His service file remained in maintenance archives until the 1970s, when a graduate student researching airfield defense innovations uncovered the incident reports and traced them back to Kenley. By then, Truelove had long since returned to Canterbury. He retired in 1946 with the rank of squadron leader. He opened a small engineering shop near the cathedral, repaired farm equipment, built custom tools, lived quietly. He never wrote about the cables, never sought recognition. When asked about the war, he spoke about engines, about the difficulty of keeping aircraft serviceable under constant strain. He died in 1983. His obituary mentioned his RAF service. It did not mention the 6 Messerschmitts that never returned to France. After his funeral, his family found the original drawings inside a metal toolbox. Pencil on graph paper. Oil-stained. Edges worn thin. They donated them to the Imperial War Museum. The archivist filed them under miscellaneous field modifications. But the logic endured. Truelove understood something many strategists overlooked. Innovation is not always forward. Sometimes the answer to a modern problem lies in an ancient principle applied with precision. Tension. Inertia. The physics of interrupting motion before it becomes destruction. He did not reinvent warfare. He did not redesign aircraft. He placed wire where speed would meet resistance. And for a few critical weeks in 1940, that was enough. The airfields he protected have changed. Kenley is bordered now by housing. Biggin Hill operates as a private airport. Tangier is quiet. The cables are gone. But their principle survives. In runway arrestor systems. In carrier deck barrier nets. In engineered overrun zones designed to disrupt motion safely. Defense does not always require armor. Sometimes it requires knowing where to place tension. There is no monument at Kenley. No plaque honoring a technical officer who built a trap. Only a footnote few will read. But 6 German pilots who skimmed low across English grass on a Friday morning in 1940 learned a lesson older than aviation. Speed is an advantage, until it isn't. The medieval and the modern are separated only by imagination. And sometimes the simplest answer is the one no one thinks to try.